The first class in for today is something called central tendency. And all that fancy word or fancy phrase means is what is the one number that we can use to represent a whole group of numbers. And the perfect example of that is your average grade. And we're going to do some examples that include that in a minute. So you know that you have several assessments that go on during the course of a semester, whether it's for math or for science or for any other subject. You don't just have one assessment, right? In my class, you just had an assessment on Tuesday. You had an assessment before that, and I had to put all of that together and come up with a number that is the fairest, most accurate measure of all of those numbers put together. That's one way to understand central tendency. It's like the number that's in the middle of all of those numbers. That's why they call it central tendency. So if you look at the definitions on the screen, it says that central tendency is the common trend for a set of data. So it's not the highest mark that you got or the lowest mark that you got. It's something that's kind of in the middle between those two. That's what central tendency is. Now, the one that most people know is the mean. Mean is also known as the average. So a lot of you ask me for your average. What's your current mark? That's your average. And another word for that is mean. To find the mean, the easiest, simplest way to find the mean is to take the sum of all the values in a set of data and divide by the number of values. And we're going to do an example of that in a few minutes. So that's how you find the mean of a number, the average of a number. Now, some averages are a little different, and we'll have some examples of that. But for today, we're just looking at the simple mean or simple average, which is just adding up all the numbers and dividing by the number of numbers. Another measure of central tendency, and again, central tendency, let me just redefine that, is the one number that represents a whole pool of numbers, is using the median. It's the middle value of a group of data ordered from smallest to largest. So one of the things you have to do when you're trying to find the median is you have to put the data in order of magnitude, in order of size. So the smallest first, then the next smallest, and the next smallest until you get to the biggest one. So for the median, you need to have them in order for you to do that. And the middle number is the median. Now to find the median, we're going to have a rule that you use for odd numbers of data points and for even numbers of data points. And I will show you an example of both of them. I don't want to sort of go over what's written on the screen here because I will do this when we're going through the example in a little while. Okay, but you can read that for yourself if you want to. But we'll do an example to make it more clear how you find the median, the middle value. The mode. Mode is the easiest one to find because it's a value that occurs the most often in a data set. So if, for instance, you were looking at your scores, right, for your math, and you had one score that you got more than any other score. Let's say that that score was 80%. You got that 3 times, but you got 70% twice, and you got 90% once. The mode is just the one that occurred the most. If you got 80% more than any other one, then that means that that is the mode. So value that occurs most often in a data set is the mode. It is possible, though, for a data set to have no mode. So maybe there is no number that occurred several times. Maybe all the numbers occurred only once. So you can have no mode, or you could have more than one mode. So these are two possibilities when you're looking at a mode. And again, all of these things are measures of central tendency. What is that one number that you can use to represent all of them? What is the trend in the data, right? What is in the middle of the data? So it could be the mode, it could be the median, it could be the mean or the average. And all of these we're going to do examples of in a minute. Something we have to mention, though, is the outlier, a value that's far away from the other values in a data set. The mean and the mode are affected by an outlier, but the median is not. And all this is saying is that you might have data which, and I'll give you an example. Let's say a student is a very good student and he gets, 80%, 90%, 95%, 100% on his test. And then one day he's not feeling so well and he gets maybe 50% or something like that. Let me just see if there's somebody who needs to get in here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, looks like everybody who needs to get in got in, right? So that's really what the median. Sorry, let me go back to the presentation here. Sorry. That's really, sorry. Oh, I was talking about outliers. The outlier is a value that really doesn't fit the trend because this student was doing so well, you know, the 90s and the 80s and almost 100. Then there's that one time that that student just wasn't up to it or for whatever reason didn't do well. That's an outlier. And if you have a mean and a mode, those could be affected by the outlier, but the median, because that's in the middle, the median does not get affected by the outlier because it's in the middle, right? And any extreme, so the one value that was way out there is not going to affect the median, but it can affect the mean. It can affect the mode. It definitely does affect the mean, and can affect the mode. So these are just the definitions here, and really what we need to do is to start working on some examples for us to see how this looks. All right. So here comes the first example. This person is buying a home. She needs a mortgage. We talked about mortgages quite a bit in the last unit. The bank wants to know her monthly salary. One of the things that the banks needs to know when you're borrowing money from them is how much money you earn, right? Because they want to make sure you can pay the loan. So she works on commission. Anybody know what commission is, by the way? If somebody earns on commission, what does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? People who are in real estate agents, they work on commission. People who are in sales, like in some of the stores that you're going to, they're working on commission. Anybody know what commission is? What that means?
It's like a percent.
Exactly. So it's a percent of what you sell. So this person doesn't have a regular salary that you can say it's going to be this amount every month. It varies based on her sales. So when this person looked at her commission over the last 6 months, and banks tend to do this, they want to know not what you earned just the last month, but because you're on commission and they know that your income will vary, they're going to go back and look at a trend of a couple of months. So in this case, Jasara worked 3,675 in January, and you can see all the other figures here. They vary. Some are up, some are down. So this is 6 months worth of salary. And the question is, what is our average salary? That's really what we're trying to find, right? That's what the bank wants to know. Not the highest number, not the lowest number. What's the average? So we're going to go through with the formula that we had before. The average is some of the data, right? And here's my data, the amounts that she earned in each of the months. That's the data. We're going to sum all of that and then put that over the number of data points. So I've done all that work already ahead of time. You will need to do this when you're doing your homework, and I'll tell you where your homework is in a minute. So I'm going to take these numbers, add them all up, 36, 75, 42, 50, all of those numbers. And my total works out to be 22,385. So the 6 months of salary, when you add them up, gives you this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to count the number of data points, and that's 6 months. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 of them. And the formula says take the sum of the data points, which is this, over the number of data points, which is this. So here we go. Put that over that, and it gives me this number. So here's my statement. The average salary for this person, Jasara, is $3,730.83, approximately. You see this little sign here, which means approximately. Did she earn this in any month? No. Some months she earned more than that. February, she earned more than that. But in April, she earned less than that. So this is the number that's kind of in the middle of everything, right? That's her middle number, 3730.83. So if you wanted to know what her average was, this is the number you're going to count. This is the one that the bank's going to look at and say, I know some months you earn more. I know some months you earn less. But on average, this is the amount of money that you earn as whatever it is that Jasara does. I'm not sure what her goal is, her role is, but she's a commission person. So remember, some months you're higher, as a person who just said it's based on a percentage. So some months you're high. If your sales were good in some months, you get a higher commission. If your sales are low in some months, you get a lower commission. But on average, that's what she earns. So that's that question. We're done. Let's move on. Let's find the median now for each of these lists of grades. So this student, hopefully not you, because this is 62%. That's not that great. There's one for 93% though. We're trying to find what is in the middle of all of these. That's what median means, right? What's the middle mark? So you can see the list of grades here, 62, 64, 76, 89, 72, 54, 93. So first thing is list the numbers in order of magnitude. So the smallest number there is 62, sorry, is 54. Then the next number is 62 and so on and so forth. So my next step is to put them in that order. So there's my 54, 62, 64, 72, 76, 89, and 93. So all I've done, which is very simple to do, is start with the lowest number and work my way up to the highest number. Now, the next thing is determine the number of data points. In this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data points. Now remember, this is not an average. I'm not going to add them up and divide by 7. I'm not doing that. I want to know what's in the middle. So the next step is, if it's odd, add 1 and then divide by 2. Choose that number in the list. If it's even, divide by 2, choose that number in the list and the one after it. Find the average of those two numbers. Okay, so we need to make a decision. How many data points did I say that we have here? Remember, you can count them for yourself. How many data points do I have here? I just counted them, but you can tell me what you remember. How many data points do I have? Talk to me. Count them for yourself if you don't remember.
7.
Okay, so this says if it's odd, no, 7 is odd, isn't that correct?
Right.
Okay, let's add 1 to that and divide by 2 because it's an odd number of points. Then we're going to choose that number from the list. Okay, so since it's 7, like you just said, it's 7 plus 1, which is 8, divided by 2, that's 4. So I'm looking for the 4th number in the list. Here's my list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need the 4th number in the list. Well, there's my arrow pointing to the 4th number right there. Just count them. 1, 2, 3. There's my 4th number. So guess what? I've just answered the question. That's it. I'm done. Right? If I can find, if it's an odd number, as I said, add 1 and then divide by 2, which I just did. 7 plus 1 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. Look for the 4th number. 4th number is 6. And the 4th number is when you have them in order. Don't try to get the 4th number when they're not in order. Right? If I tried to get the 4th number from the original set of data, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4. I think the answer was 89. And that's why I have to put them in order first. So I know the 4th largest number. And that's what it is. It's 72. So the answer is that the median is 72. Do the same thing over here. I'm going to follow the steps again, just like the last one. List the numbers in order of magnitude. The lowest number here is 56, and it goes all the way up to 98. So here is my list of numbers. 56 followed by 62, followed by 63, followed by 67, then 84, then it's exactly the same idea as what we did the first time. We're just putting it in order of size. That seems simple enough. Determine the number of data points. Okay, I'm not going to count them for you this time. You count them. How many data points do I have here this time around? You tell me. All you have to do is count them. Just count the number of numbers. How many is that? You have it on the screen in front of you. All you need to do is count the numbers. I'm waiting. Anybody? Count those numbers on the screen, please. And then we're going to ask the question of whether that's an odd
6.
or an even number. Thank you very much. 6 numbers. Is that an odd number or an even number?
Even.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do what we did the first time. We're not going to add 1 and then divide by 2. If it's even, divide by 2. Then we're going to choose that number in the list and the one after it. It takes a little bit more work to do a median when you have an even number of digits. So let's start with that. 6 is what you just said. Divide that by 2, I'm going to get 3. So here are my numbers in order, same order that I had them in before, 56 followed by 62 followed by 63, etc., etc. This thing says 3 when I divide the number of numbers by 2. So I need the 3rd number, but I also need the 4th number. So if I count from the beginning, 1, 2, 3, I need the 3rd number. But according to this, it says choose a number in the list, which is the 3rd number, and the number after it. So I need the 3rd, and 4th number. I need these two numbers here. Now, does it mean that these two numbers are the median? No. It says find the average of those two numbers. So we found the two numbers. We're sorry, I just had a call coming in there. Right. So I found the two numbers, 63 and 67, and it says find the average. So how do I find an average? We just did that in the first part of this. 63 plus 67 divided, there are two numbers. So it's this number plus this number divided by that. So if you do 63, you can do that on your own. That's 130 divided by 2 is equal to 65. Okay? That is the median. So see the difference. The first one, which was odd, we just find the middle number by adding 1 to the odd number, dividing by 2, and then you just choose that number from the list. Just even, divide by 2, find that third number, in this case the third number, and the fourth number. Try find those two numbers, the 1 and the 1 beside it, and then add them up, divide by 2. There's more work. It is more work when it's an even number of numbers. Okay? But the answer is 65. Okay, let's move on. Unless there are any questions, I'm going to move on. Find the mode. Okay, now for mode, remember what mode is. Mode is the number that occurs the most times. So the first step in doing this is to do what we did in the median, which is to list the numbers in order of magnitude. They're not in the correct order right now, so that's something that you can do easily enough. Put them in order of magnitude. So it's 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's just taking these numbers and putting them in order of size. So I've listed them in order of magnitude. Look for the number that occurs most frequently. So look at these numbers. Because they're in order, it should now be easier for you to see which number I'm getting the most, meaning which one that occurs more than any other number. Can anybody tell me what that number is that occurs more than any other number? Because that's our mode, right? Anybody think they know what that mode is? What number do you see? I'll give you a hint. More than once. What's the mode in this case? I know you know this. Come on, tell me. What's the mode? Nobody? All right, let's try it. Go ahead.
5.
Absolutely. All right. So here are the list of numbers. This number comes up twice. That's your mode. That's absolutely your mode. It's as easy as that. So finding a mode is just a matter of making sure you figure out which number occurs the most, because that's what the mode is. Let's do this again. List the numbers in order of magnitudes. I'm looking at this set of numbers now. Same thing. Put 25, 25, 29, 30, 30, 32. So I put them in order of magnitude. Look for the number that occurs most frequently. Okay, well, this one looks a little, I don't know. Here are the list of numbers. The 25 occurs twice, but the 30 also occurs twice. So which one is the mode? Turns out you can have more than one mode. So in this case, there are two modes. 25 is one of the modes, and 30 is another mode. We call this situation bimodal, which means you have two modes. You can have either more than two modes. And sometimes you can have no modes. So if none of these occurred, let's say more than once, then, or, that's exactly when you'd have no mode. If you look at a set of numbers and everyone is just occurring one time, then there's no mode. They're all the same, right? So that's a case of being bimodal. So this one was a mode of 5 because the only one that occurred twice was 5. And this one had two modes, 25 and 30. Now, if there was a number here that occurred, let's say 4 times, and these only occurred twice, then the one that occurred 4 times would be the mode, because I'm looking for the one that occurs most frequently. That's what mode means. All right, we have one last question to tackle. Here's a kind of question that you sometimes ask me. Student earned the following grades, each out of 20 on 5 quizzes. So there was a 10, a 14, a 15, a 12, and a 14. Now, these are all out of 20. So these are not percentages, right? So remember that this 10 doesn't mean 10%. This 10 means 10 out of 20. This 14 means 14 out of 20, and so on and so forth. What mark would she have to get on the next quiz in order to bring her average up to 70%? These are not in percentages. That's kind of a problem, right? These are all numbers out of 20. So the first thing I would do is I would determine what 70% means as a mark out of 20, right? Let's convert that 70% into, these are all numbers out of 20. So why don't I just simply make this 70% into a number out of 20? So the way that I could do that is by finding what 70% of 20 is, which is 0.7 times 20, which is 14. So now I know that the average that I want, the student, not me, the student wants an average of 14 out of 20, right? She went as low as 10, went as high as 15, but she wants her average to be 14. How can she make that happen? You know, this 10 out of 20 here, that's like 50%. That's really pulling her average down. So let's see how we can do this now. Well, let me remind you what the formula is. The average quiz mark needs to be 14 out of 20. We know that, right? Because that's what 70% comes up to. So let's put the formula down again. We know the sum of the data. Remember this formula from 2 slides ago, over the number of data points. Now let's see if we can work backwards to find out what that number is that's going to make this average go up to 70%. So watch carefully now. I'm going to say that if I added the 10, the 14, the 15, the 12, and the 14, these are the numbers that she has so far, plus x, which is what we don't know yet, right? We don't know what that grade is on her next test that's going to make her get the 14, which is 70%. Put that over 6. Why over 6? Because we're talking about, yeah, she's only done 5 tests so far, but we're going to be giving her another test to get up to the 70%. She's really out of 6 tests. So the 10, the 14, the 15, the 12, the 14, and the x, we don't know what x is, over 6 is what's going to be equal to 14, because 14 is the 70% that she wants. So how do we solve for x? How do we solve for x? Well, we did some work with equations in the early part of the semester. I don't know how much of that you remember. But if I have a fraction like this over 6 equals 14, the first step in solving this is to multiply the 6 by this side over here. Bring that 6 from the bottom of this side and multiply it by the 14 on that side, okay? And what I'm left with is just the part on top here. So this 6 times the 4, it's like cross multiplication, which we did quite a bit when we were doing trigonometry. So take the bottom of this side and multiply by the top of this side. So 6 times 14 is equal to all of this stuff right here. Okay. So the next thing we should probably do is add up all of these numbers here and multiply these 2 numbers over here. So my next line says that this plus this plus this plus this is 65, right? That's adding the 10, the 14, the 15, the 12, the 14. So that plus the x is equal to whatever 14 times 6 is, which turns out to be 84. So I have one more step left in order to find out what that x is. What's that missing x? What's that last step that isolates the x so we know what her mark on that quiz needs to be to get her up to 70%? Can anybody help me out with how I get that x on its own? It's 65 plus x is equal to 84. What do I do to get that x on its own? We did equations. Hopefully you remember all this stuff we did in the first part of the class. How do I get that x on its own? Nobody?
Subtract 65.
Absolutely. From 84. So 65 from 84. This person needs to get 19 out of 20 on the next test to bring that average up to 70%. Now, let me throw something out to you right now. What is our current average? I'd like you to work that out for me right now. I'm not going to do it for you. Work out what our current average is. Before this is, she had these test marks, right? Could you go ahead quickly and tell me what her current average is? and you can tell me what you get when you have that answer. I'll give you a few minutes. Hopefully you have your calculator close by that you can figure out what that is. What is her current average test mark? Hopefully you know exactly what to do to get that. Anybody? Chime in when you have a number. Remember the formula. The formula is right here. The sum of the data divided by the number of data points, but only for these 5. Before we get that last test, what is the average right now? Does anybody have a number for me on that? Well, what do we do if you're not sure? Tell me what we do to get the average now. What's the average right now? Anybody can jump in. What do I do right now to get that average?
Add all the numbers and then divide by how many there are.
Well, do it. That's exactly right. And you tell me what the answer is when you've done it. Oh.
13.
Absolutely. So that wasn't part of this question, but our average is currently 13, which is really 65%. If she gets 19 on her next test, our average goes up to 70%, which is 14 out of 20. So that's really what I wanted to get through with you today. There was one other question which I was thinking of doing with you, but maybe I'll start the next class with that question. But I'm going to leave it there for today.